Just Misty joined in on this as well. Misty Marris, you watching this, Misty?
I am watching it.
Goodness.
Wow,
That's the Turtle Boy guy, right?
Business. Yeah, that was Turtle Boy. Man, this is a huge victory for Karen Reed.
Yeah.
I mean, acquitted on all of the higher level charges, essentially convicted on only what we call in most jurisdictions a DWI. It's called an OUI.
She's going to get probation, they said. They just recommended a 1-year probation. She could have went to jail for years.
For years. I mean, the maximum sentence for driving under the influence or a DWI is 2.5 years. But Connell, when you're talking about a DWI, you're looking at a whole different set of factors, like were there prior DWIs on your record? You know, are there other prior convictions? She doesn't have any of those. So probation is really the only sentence that would make any sense in this case. And this is an odd one, Connell, because you don't usually see people being convicted of DWI kind of retroactively, right?
Right.
This was part of the lower offenses, the lesser included offenses to the manslaughter. It was the one that probably from a prosecution perspective you think of as a throwaway. There was lots of evidence that she was intoxicated. But
Yes.
what this means, Connell, that the jury listened to the defense when they said there was no collision, there was no collision, there was no collision in that closing argument, because this means the jury only believes that she drove while she was intoxicated, that her vehicle did not make contact or have anything to do with the death of John O'Keefe. This is really a shocking verdict.
All right. Just for anyone who's just tuning in, so what the heck is going on? We've been following this case. There's the verdict that was just read. Again, not guilty on the most serious charge, which was second-degree murder. The only guilty is, as Misty says, basically the DWI. Not guilty, leaving the scene of an accident. Who's Karen Reed? Well, she's a 45-year-old woman. She used to work as a financial analyst for years and as a professor, college professor. But then she got into all this because she was accused of killing her boyfriend, who was a Boston police officer named John O'Keefe. It happened back in January of 22. They had a trial. They put her on trial, and the first jury couldn't reach a verdict. It was a hung jury. And so then back we went. In between the two trials, there was a documentary made that a lot of people saw. But even at the first trial, this scene you're looking at now was the scene. People showing up in pink. She became sort of a cult hero for people who thought that she was framed, that there was corruption in the Boston Police Department that led to Karen Reed facing charges she didn't deserve to face. That's kind of the background on this. So then you go to the retrial. Some of the testimony changed. We can get into that. But at the end of the day, this is the results Karen Reed supporters would want. Hey, Marcus, who was? Oh, there's some other people. So I guess we're waiting for Karen, right? Who was? Any idea who was that other woman that walked out screaming there? Do we know or no?
I believe part of the defense team there is somebody that's, yes, I've got you guys. So somebody who's been with Karen Reed's team walking in and out, and you heard the chants here. They're going from chanting to singing, and we are expecting at this point for Karen Reed to be able to walk out. Perhaps, or is she coming out, or is she staying inside, Jonathan, my producer?
She's coming out.
She's going to be coming outside. I just got word from my producer that Karen Reed will step outside here. That is what everybody's anticipating at this point here. And Greg, if you're not already, if you can zoom out as much as you can, it's just incredible to look at this scene. How many people are here? Essentially, for all intents and purposes, Connell, Karen Reed is a free woman. She may basically serve a year of probation, which was recommended by the prosecutor over that essentially DWI charge that you mentioned there, but she avoided spending the rest of her life in jail after being accused of killing her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. This is the second time she's been on trial. It's worth remembering that. This is certainly a historic moment, and these supporters have been here every single minute of that trial, so we have our eyes on those steps. We expect Karen Reed to walk down at any moment.
Why do you think, Misty Marris, this trial has captured so many people's attention in the way that it has? But what do you think it is about? I mean, and you know, me included. I mean, I got into that documentary. I thought it was intriguing for a lot of reasons. The police work, the way and I got to say, to be honest with you, today, it almost feels it's like we're getting to, I don't know if it's celebrity culture or whatever it is, or it almost feels frivolous to be talking about this. We have War and Peace, Iran, everything that we were going to talk about. But this, people are interested in this too. And all these people showed up. I mean, they show up at the courthouse every day. What is it about this case?
Yeah, this case is not just the locals who are maybe know the community,
Right.
may know some of the players. It's really captured the attention across the country. And Connell, I really think it's because of all the intrigue. Karen Reed raised this defense about basically a conspiracy involving law enforcement. And it seemed at the onset of the case, so going back to the beginning of trial one, and I've really covered both of these trials very, very closely. Going back to trial one, it seemed really far-fetched. And then you see trial one unfold, and you see these text messages from the lead investigator. You see a lot of basically a lot of people that the defense had identified as maybe being involved of a cover-up, sending messages to each other the night of John O'Keefe's death. And I think that that's part of the reason why there's so much attention on this case, that it has all of that intrigue of a conspiracy. It almost feels like it's a movie, except it was Karen Reed's real life. And then when you think about what happened trial one, we have a mistrial. After the fact, jurors come forward and say, well, actually, we were in agreement on some of the charges. So that just really adds more fuel to the fire as you get into trial two.
I was just thinking of that part. Can you pick up on that a little bit more? I think that's really interesting because now, technically we have a split verdict here. I know there's just a minor charge that basically driving under the influence. But in trial one, wasn't there some questions, to your point in retrospect, about whether they could split the verdict or what they could convict on? What was that all about again?
Yeah, absolutely. So in trial one, the jury deliberated for 26 hours. Now, during the course of that 26 hours, they went to the judge and said, we cannot come to a consensus. The judge read what's called an Allen charge, the dynamite charge, basically says, everybody go back into that jury room and see if you can come to an agreement. Ultimately, they did not. But what did not happen, the judge did not go through the verdict sheet, meaning she's charged with different crimes. She's charged with a high-level crime of second-degree murder, and she's charged with manslaughter. That's a second count. And then you have all of these lesser included offenses, which is what she ultimately is convicted of, the DWI. But the judge did not go through that exercise of confirming that they were hung on every single charge. So after the fact, a hung jury is called on everything. After the fact, jurors came forward, spoke to the defense team, spoke out and said, we actually acquitted her on second degree murder. And Connell, think about the seriousness of this. The defense went to the Supreme Court, an emergency application to SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States, and said, we have to pause this trial because she may have been acquitted, and this next trial will be double jeopardy on those charges. Now, Supreme Court declined to take that case up, and we find ourselves here again today where, quite frankly, during deliberations about that same verdict sheet, there were a lot of questions and clarifications that were asked with respect to this count two of manslaughter. So it was really an interesting and very twisted path to get to this ultimate result.
So for all of the differences between trial one and trial two, this in some ways is similar because of what we know about, in retrospect, what we know about trial one. And they, again, did not think that she should be found guilty of second-degree murder, but this time they actually put the not guilty verdict in on that charge. I mean, and that in and of itself is kind of legally fascinating, right, Misty? But what would you say about a piece of evidence or testimony that stands out in terms of creating the most reasonable doubt in this situation?
What I think is really interesting, one of the biggest differences between trial one and trial two was that Karen Reed did a lot of media interviews. In fact, she had a documentary crew following her through trial one. She did a lot of media interviews, really big documentaries, and all of that was something that could come back into the courtroom. And that's a huge, huge risk to have all those extrajudicial statements out there. And prosecutors played many of them for the jury, starting with their opening statement. They were playing clips of these interviews. And what I found really fascinating, Connell, is that when the jury asked some questions yesterday, one of those questions was, were the video clips evidence? And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm prosecutors, I'm pretty worried right now because the jury is sitting there deliberating. This is the end of the trial. They're deliberating. And they're asking whether or not these clips, which prosecutors fought tooth and nail to get into the courtroom, were even evidence they should be considering. What does that tell you about the impact on the jury, right? So I thought that was a really interesting piece. And another thing that was a big difference is that Michael Proctor, he was the lead investigator. In trial one, he had to sit there on the stand during cross-examination and read some very crude and unprofessional text messages that the defense said focused on Karen Read. He was a terrible investigator who did not bring the investigation outside of Karen Read. He didn't look at any other leads. And then all that resulted in, actually, his termination from his position and disciplinary action. So come trial two, prosecutors do not have him testify. Probably a prudent decision because he really tanked trial one. But you know what the defense was able to do, Connell? They were able to say, hey, jury, don't you think it's weird that the lead investigator in this case did not take the stand, kind of point to the empty chair and say, well, this was such a bad investigation. Prosecutors did not even put the lead investigator on the stand. So that's really, really effective because the whole defense theory of the case, they weren't allowed to argue what's called third-party culprit. They weren't allowed to say this guy did it, not Karen Read. But what they were allowed to argue is that investigators failed to pursue other viable leads and conduct a full and thorough investigation. And that empty chair really, really, I think, solidified it to the jury.
It's fascinating because he was a terrible witness when he was in the chair, but maybe even worse when they didn't have anybody in the chair, because then you got nobody to, then you know, to your point, you know something's missing. Something big is missing. Hey, one more time back to Marcus. So you're watching that.